Welcome to the Beat Reporter's Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. I'm AJ Cassavell, MLB.com's Padres reporter, with Andrew asking the questions. Andrew, what do we have first?
This one comes from Ken. With Wil Myers finally healthy, what are we going to see from him here on out?
It's a good question. Wil Myers, obviously, the biggest question for him has always been his health. It's always been, can he kind of piece together complete seasons? The second biggest question, I think, is the mental aspect of the game, because he is a fantastic hitter. He's a middle-of-the-order presence. He's an all-star when he's going good. The problem has been in the last couple seasons, when he isn't going good, those spells have tended to linger a little bit longer than his hot stretches. I think he's made some strides mentally at the plate this season. I think he's legitimately moving past some of his struggles, some of his failures right now. The question is, when he goes into a little bit longer of a rut, is that something that he can overcome? I think Wil Myers is a bona fide middle-of-the-order bat if he can put those struggles aside and maybe and be the kind of hitter that we've seen these last 2-3 weeks.
Next one comes from Chloe. Is Kirby Yates here to stay, or could he be on the move?
He could be on the move. I get the sense that Kirby Yates is in a little bit of a kind of the same situation Brad Hand was last year. Maybe some teams didn't trust the stuff because he hadn't done it as long. Brad Hand now has had an extra year of success under his belt, and I think some other teams really appreciated that about him, that he had done it for longer. The Padres value Kirby Yates very highly. He's got his splitter's one of the best pitchers in the game. He's the kind of guy you want at the back end of games with a low heartbeat. But if I had to guess, I think he's the kind of guy they would hang on to, unless there's another team that views Kirby Yates with the same value as the Padres. I think he's definitely a guy. He's definitely a guy whose name you'll hear in the next week. But if I had to guess, he's staying in San Diego.
Jackson wants to know, who's a shortstop next year, and what does Fernando Tatis Jr. injury do to change those plans?
Well, Tatis is still a candidate. I talked to a couple people in the organization yesterday after news came that he'd be out for the season, and they're going to go into spring training essentially with Fernando Tatis competing for a starting job. That being said, I think the Padres aren't going to do what they've done this season, where Freddie Galvis is their only shortstop and he's played essentially almost every inning of every game. They're going to look to bring someone in to kind of guide Tatis along, and if there's a stretch where they need to bridge the gap before Tatis is ready, he's losing a couple months of development time. The Padres aren't too concerned about that because of all the baseball he's played in the last 2 seasons. He played winter ball. He played deep into the playoffs last season. But I still think the Padres wouldn't mind bringing someone in if they have to bridge a gap slightly between the start of the season and whenever Fernando Tatis is ready.
Connor asks, what does Francisco Mejía acquisition mean to Austin Hedges' future?
I think a lot of people saw that trade as some sort of knock on Austin Hedges and what he's capable of. I don't see that at all. I think maybe more than anything, it's an indication that some of the catching depth in the Padres system could be available to be traded later. But with Austin Hedges, he's one of the best defensive catchers in the game. He's an elite pitch framer. He's an elite defender with his arm and with his blocking skills. That's worth a lot at the catching position. Maybe less so at other positions around the diamond, even shortstop and center field. But with a young Padres pitching staff that's expected to come up, I think the Padres still view Austin Hedges very favorably. That being said, I think if everything goes according to plan and Mejía ends up being a catcher, like the Padres are going to ask him to do, I think maybe they convince Mejía to split some time between catcher and the outfield and work him in alongside Austin Hedges. If Austin Hedges is catching 105, 110, 115 games a season, you've seen a lot of teams be really successful with not a platoon at catcher, but I think with a little balance to where the guy's not playing a position that's extremely taxing every single day. I think Austin Hedges is still viewed in a very high regard in the Padres system.
Next question comes from Dylan. Why isn't Hunter Renfroe getting more playing time?
The question there is who do you take playing time away from? The Padres outfield has been pretty good lately. Wil Myers is back and he's healthy. Manuel Margot is their center fielder of the future, and he's made serious strides. And I don't think you want to take Travis Jankowski out of the lineup either against right-handers. He's reaching base around 370, 380 clip against righties, and he plays elite defense and has elite speed. Hunter Renfroe is doing a lot of really good things of late. He's hitting the ball he's hitting for power, and I think the Padres kind of like what he's done when asked to kind of come off the bench a little bit more. He hasn't sulked. He's taken to that role. He's learned how to handle it. And you know what? The way the baseball season works, I wouldn't be surprised if, God forbid there's an injury, but there's usually playing time that comes available for guys who are doing good things. I wouldn't be shocked if Renfroe got more, but the Padres outfield's a crowded place right now.
JJ asks, when does Luis Urias get his call-up?
That's what everyone's asking, and a couple weeks ago it was, when does Urias and Tatis come up? Now it's now that Tatis' season is over, all the attention shifts to Urias. I think Carlos Asuaje is playing some really good second base right now. I would guess that Urias comes up at some point before the end of the season at least. I'll say September. The Padres want to find out kind of what they have in Asuaje. They know for the most part, but Urias is an exciting prospect, and on a team that's really lacking in on-base ability and guys who can really battle, Urias is a nice fit. That said, Asuaje has been doing a lot of those good things too. I think the biggest key with Urias is the Padres don't want for him to come up and not get the playing time. So they're going to keep playing him at AAA regularly, and then I wouldn't be surprised if we see him in late August or September.
Ali wants to know, what's the approximate timeline for Brett Kennedy's promotion to the majors?
Brett Kennedy's a guy who, the Padres system is so deep right now. The Padres system is so strong on young pitching that they really want to take a look at some of these guys at the upper levels, so they know what they have and they know who they need to add to the 40-man roster before their serious roster crunch this season. So if I had to guess, I think Brett Kennedy's the kind of guy who could earn a promotion in September and could make a few starts. And if he impresses, then he could be the kind of guy who comes into spring training next year with a chance to compete for the job. So the Padres feel very strongly about the way their pitching sets up the next few years. They want to find out what some of these higher-end arms have while they have the chance before some of the lower-level, big-time prospects emerge onto the scene in a year or two.
Next one comes from Yusuf. Is Matt STRAHM a candidate to start next season?
He's a candidate to start. I think the Padres really like what he's been doing in the bullpen. He's been really strong in these short bursts. And that's always been the Padres' plan this season. He's coming off knee surgery. It was kind of a savvy deadline acquisition last year. They got STRAHM coming off, I think, only like 2 or 3 weeks after his surgery. They got him at a discounted rate, and he's been outstanding. My guess would be they try to stretch him out at the beginning of spring training. If he takes to that, and if he takes the ball and runs with it in the rotation, they're going to be more than happy to have Matt STRAHM as a starting pitching candidate. But I think it might be more than likely that they view him. He's going to get more innings. He's going to get more high leverage innings now that Brad Hand and Adam Simber are gone. And I suspect he'll thrive in them. He's been outstanding basically since his first outing, which was a little bit flat, and since then his ERA is under 2. And so he's the kind of guy who, yes, the Padres would like to start him, but if they end up with Matt STRAHM in the bullpen next season, I don't think they'll be disappointed about it.
Next one comes from Joshua. If the Archer rumors are true, great, but is it worth it?
Well, that depends what it is. Who are the guys they're giving up? I think a lot of Padre fans really, really covet some of these prospects, but the Padres at some point soon are going to have to make some decisions on these guys. They got to add, I think, 9 top 30 prospects to the 40-man roster before the time the season's over, or before November when the deadline comes about for the Rule 5 draft. If some of those prospects are of interest to other teams and they can get a big league ready guy, I don't think they'll hesitate to do it. I know that some people view that as giving up a prospect, but I think in the long run they have a chance to lose those guys anyway. That being said, Archer is obviously going to command a lot. He has, I believe, 3 more years of control after this season. But like I said earlier, it's a young rotation with a lot of promise. Who's kind of going to be that frontline guy to lead them? I can't speak to whether it's worth it because I don't know what it is. I don't know who those guys are, but I don't think that acquiring a frontline guy like Archer, who has a reasonable value, is something the Padres would shy away from.
This one comes from Irwin. Ross or Stammen on the move?
I think they both could be. They're both guys that have been solid this season, and they kind of fit the mold of a contender. Craig Stammen especially, you look at what he's done, escaping jams, he can pitch multiple innings, he can get guys from both sides of the plate out. He went through a little bit of a rough patch, I think, at the beginning of July, end of June. But he's a veteran guy on a very team-friendly contract who doesn't mesh well with the Padres' plans for contention, his 2-year deal. And so I think he's a guy that could be on the move. I think Ross is obviously another guy. His contract's up after the end of the season. He's been pretty good for most of the year. He struggled at the beginning of July. I don't know if his dip in velocity is too much of a knock because he is commanding his fastball a little bit better. I don't see the Padres getting a whole lot for one of them. I think maybe if they package the two of them and potentially another guy, KIRBY Yates is a guy we mentioned. Travis Jankowski it could be a useful fit somewhere else. If they package some guys together, they could get a pretty decent trade haul. We talked about Matt STRAHM a second ago. That's exactly what they did last season. They packaged 2 relievers and Trevor Cahill, and ended up getting a pretty nice trade haul for that. So yeah, I think there'll be guys that are talked about a lot in the coming days, and they're probably the 2 likeliest Padres to be dealt.
Alan has a very important question: in and out versus HEDGES. Who you got?
Ooh, in and out. For me, I'll take HEDGES. I live in Ocean Beach, and I live pretty much equidistant from both of them. So the problem with HEDGES for me is the line, and so I would say, generally speaking, if I need a burger, I'm going to go to In-N-Out, but I think HEDGES has better burgers, if that makes sense. I usually don't want to take the time to wait, but I'm not going to say that In-N-Out has better burgers than HEDGES because I don't think they do.
Back to the Padres. Ira asks, why isn't Christian Villanueva in consideration for NL Rookie of the Year?
He's struggled lately, and I know he has a ton of home runs, but he really needs to work on his plate discipline. And I think he was in consideration after the first couple months, but he's taken a step back at the plate. Pitchers seem to be getting into chase a little bit too easily right now. His defense has been a whole lot better lately. So I think that's been a nice positive for the Padres long term, because they still are looking for that long-term third baseman, and Villanueva could be that guy. But I think there's a couple other guys in the National League, Soto and Anderson and Walker Buehler, who have had better years. That's not to say that Christian Villanueva can't kind of piece it back together at the plate, maybe boost his discipline a little bit, and start hitting home runs at the clip he did earlier in the year. I think he could be in contention, but right now there are just other candidates who are a little better.
Next one comes from Chris. How close are the Padres to being a serious threat in the National League West?
I don't think 2019 will be the year. I think 2019 could be a year they take a little bit of a step forward in terms of being competitive around maybe 500. I think 2020 could be the first time. It depends how you define a serious threat. They're going to have Tatis, they're going to have Urias, they're going to have a couple of these pitching prospects up by 2020, and you start to look at the lineup. How many of the guys on this current team could be a factor going forward? You piece Tatis and Urias in there, 2 guys who have reached base and who have hit at every level they've been. They fit nicely with what the Padres are trying to do. Now you have Francisco Mejia, who came over in the trade. I think maybe 2019 is the year they start to move toward contention. 2020 could be the year that they're a legitimate threat in the National League West.
Up next is Irene. When is Colin Ray coming back? Where does he fit?
Colin Ray is again, Colin Ray speaks to the depth that the Padres have among their starting pitchers in long term in the rotation, and I think he is probably another guy who needs to prove himself at the big league level, kind of like Brett Kennedy would be whenever he arrives, before this glut of young pitching talent comes to the major leagues. So I think Colin Ray is probably going to get another shot, whether it's the end of this season or the start of next season, I don't know. But he'll need to prove himself. He's shown some really nice things in the past, but these young pitchers are coming quick. Anyway, thanks for watching the Beat Reporter's Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. Tune in again next time.